Many thanks to Steve Forcucci for his beautiful performance of Solace by Scott Joplin. Good morning. I am the Reverend Heather Janulis, and it's my great joy to serve as the parish minister of the Winchester Unitarian Society. Before we continue today's special Music Sunday, please turn your attention to these short announcements. Our online newsletter, Highlights, has more detailed information. Youth group, WCGers meet outside at WUS today from 2 to 4, wearing masks and costumes for fun fall activities together. Also today at 4:30, the RE committee is hosting a pumpkin carving jack-o'-lantern pizza party. Come in costume and bring your own pumpkin and beverage. We provide the rest. If you missed neighboring faiths, 6th through 8th graders are invited to join a world religions group with First Unitarian Chicago. You'll get acquainted next week, November 1st from noon to 1 o'clock. Please contact Rebecca to join. We Believe in Dog, the human canine walking group, walks again at 10 a.m. on the 31st. Let me know if you will join. Consider coming in costume, you or your dog. Next Sunday is the Remembrance Service. Please send John Kramer names to be included in a sung litany and set aside photos to share in worship. Elections are spiritual and community experiences. Here are 2 opportunities to be together. On November 3rd, we open a Zoom room to gather at 7:30 and then keep the room open for a voter vigil. Then on Thursday, we gather again at 7 for a listening circle. No matter who wins, there is healing to be done. We are again donating Thanksgiving baskets to the Council of Social Concern. We have commitments for 38 baskets. Thank you. The cost is $70. Sign up by Wednesday, the 28th, through a link in Highlights. Contact Social Action if you can help deliver the boxes. And now Julie Kuhn has a very special announcement. Julie, are you there? Take it away, Julie.
Unmute. Okay, here, finally, I found the unmute button. I am here to announce some auction fundraising news, but first I think it's important to hear a little bit of history of how we got to where we are. In the fall, I signed up to do a fundraiser and we thought it was going to be Dine Around, and then it became obvious this spring that we were going to have to pivot to something that could be done remotely. So we settled on an auction and a never before done live Zoom auction. And so when asked what I estimated the fundraising amount would be, I figured hopefully we could get $10,000. We could make $10,000. And then I assembled an auction team, including Marilyn Mullane as my co-chair. And we worked all summer long soliciting donations. And the donations just kept coming in, creative donations. And in the last 2 weeks, ever so generous bidders just kept bidding, including last night at the live auction. And so that $10,000, I'm here to tell you that that $10,000 estimate last night got turned into, I'm getting choked up, $30,000. We raised $30,000. Which is the highest that we've ever raised for fundraising. So thank you all. I think that this is iconic of our congregation, that when we all work together on one goal, 1 + 1 = 3, that 10,000 became 30,000 because of all of you. So thank you.
And thank you, Julie, for your incredible leadership. Thank you to your team, to all the donors and all the bidders. And now, let us open our hearts and minds to the spirit of worship.
Welcome, everyone. That's great news about the auction. That's amazing. Welcome to this morning's service of the Winchester Unitarian Society, a caring community devoted to spiritual growth, social transformation, and environmental responsibility. As a welcoming congregation, we affirm the full inclusion of people of all sexual orientations and gender identities. My name is Martin Newhouse, and I'm your worship associate this morning. As you know, as Unitarian Universalists, our faith does not require us to believe in any particular tenet or creed, and among us we believe many different things. As the first minister of this society, Richard Metcalf, put it so many years ago, we do not regard even the best creed as final. We look for new truths and new statements of old ones. We maintain the unlimited right of free inquiry. But while we do not impose any particular ideology or belief, we recognize joyfully that our faith does call us to do things. Among the recognize the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In that spirit, we greet with joy and fellowship all who are gathering with us this morning. And of course, that includes all of those who are with us thanks to the technology of Zoom, who come to be able to worship with us every Sunday from locations near and far, from as close as Winchester and as far away as India. And it's especially wonderful in the context of the times in which we are living, that so many who could not normally be with us physically because of distance or other circumstances are able to join us online. We are blessed that this can be so. So that all may enjoy this service undisturbed by inadvertent distractions or by extraneous noises, all with us this morning have had their audio muted, except for those who will be participating in the service. Also, to avoid distractions, we ask that those with us this morning refrain from using the chat function except when invited to do so, as we will be in a few moments. At the conclusion of the service this morning, we will all be able to chat together, and then after a few moments, we will be invited into breakout sessions where we will be unmuted and able to greet and speak with one another. I now invite us all to take a moment and greet one another through the chat function. Remember our chat covenant. We only write things that we would say in person in the sanctuary. Along with sharing your greetings, if you have some especially good news, let us know. Please share it. We will be called back to worship through the ringing of the bells at our partner church in Marosvásárhely, Transylvania.
We light our flaming chalice as beloved people united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly toward our highest ideal.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Kelly Morgan, the Director of Lifespan Religious Education. And I was thinking about history and the stories that are told. You see, history is a kind of digging around in the past or in the present, and somebody or a group of somebodies at some point decides how the story, the history, is told. Somebody or a group of somebodies decide what is important. Somebody or a group of somebody decides what is the truth and who matters and whose truth is told. The stories that many of us have been told about musicians and people of accomplishment and leadership and science are often told about white people. And as we look at our history books and at our news, guess what? We've got some more digging for truth to do, digging for more stories, digging deeper and deeper, looking farther and wider. How many of you have heard about the inventor of the light bulb, Alexander Graham Bell? How many of you have heard about Lewis Latimer? He invented the filament thing inside the light bulb that actually makes it light or keeps it lit. And he worked with Bell on the design of the telephone and invented the early air conditioning unit. We don't hear much about him, but Alexander Graham Bell is an incredibly familiar name. It's in all the history books, all the science books. Do you think that Mr. Lewis or Mr. Latimer was left out of those books because he was African American? Maybe. How many of you have donated blood or heard about donating blood? Dr. Charles Drew was a member of the team who developed blood transfusion programs and what is now known as the Bloodmobile, kind of a cute name. Dr. Drew eventually resigned from his position with the American Red Cross because they were separating human blood into Black people's blood and white people's blood. Dr. Drew was Black, African American, and it wasn't until 50, 70 years ago, 1950, that the American Red Cross finally recognized that all blood was red and all blood is equal. Dr. Shirley Jackson is a lady with lots of firsts, graduating from MIT, a physicist who works in theoretical physics, which I cannot understand, who made all sorts of things possible. She made touch-tone phones possible, fiber optic cables. So think of her every time you're on the internet. Have you heard her name before today? Think about why. How many of us have been soaked by a super soaker? We have Mr. Lonnie Johnson to thank for that one. Mr. Johnson actually wasn't a toy maker. He was an aerospace engineer for NASA, and he served in the US Air Force. He worked on the Galileo Jupiter probe and the Mars Observer project, and has lots and lots of patents to his name. We don't hear about him very often, if we hear about him at all. He is also African American. These are just 4 stories of scientists who often didn't make it into the newspaper or into the history books, or if they did, their stories weren't always told in the same way as the stories of white scientists. There are other stories, other African Americans of the past.
May the light within you shine before you every day, every day. May the light within you shine before you, guide your way, guide your way. May the love we share surround you and chase your fears away. May the light within you shine before you. This we pray, this we pray.
We now enter into the centering time in our service, beginning with 2 musical meditations. After the meditations, you are invited to engage in a ritual, kindling of the light, a time to light a candle at home in recognition of the joys, sorrows, and concerns you carry within. After the kindling ritual, we will be together in a time of shared silence and then sing together, Precious Lord. However, before we begin our centering time, we would like to take a moment and extend our congratulations to Cynthia and Scott Randall with the birth of their first grandchild, Leah Randall Sears, on September 13th. Many blessings to you and to your growing family. Now let us begin with the musical meditation, Hold Fast to Dreams.
Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, for if dreams die, a barren field. Life is a barren field frozen. Frozen with snow.
everybody. I hope you're doing well. It's wonderful to be with you as always. And I'm very honored to have the occasion to speak with you this morning. Our theme this month is deep listening, so it made sense that we would feature a Music Sunday during its course. And here we are, although with a different kind of Music Sunday than we often offer. Usually we may have a larger ensemble and the choir, and those things unfortunately are beyond our scope currently. And I know I speak on behalf of many when I express how much we miss the experience of making music together in this community, much as we miss other opportunities. However, we still do have the opportunity to make music, and we've been exploring it through the miracles of mixing voices together, as you heard in our hymn, and of course in the other music presented today. You may have actually spent your entire pandemic time on YouTube sampling music by millions of different artists, both current and historical. I want to spend a little time today thinking about the music of African Americans, a rich history and one we could devote many reflections to. I know I'm in good company when I express a heightened sense of urgency when it comes to matters of race and racism in this country. Events of the summer seem to have tipped the scale, altered the conversation, and there is a new hope for a true anti-racist reality. We are deeply listening, perhaps in a new way. And I'm finding new stories and histories being told about white supremacy and how it has affected African Americans. Much of this history seems to be things I wish I had learned before. And I know many institutions here at Winchester Unitarian Society and the school I teach at, Berklee College of Music, are looking at ways to address these histories and chart a path to healing. History is so important because it shapes our present. And there are histories of music that have been overlooked and forgotten by the white majority. Beautiful music that speaks to the human condition and music that can both calm and terrify us. Over the last few years, I've been exploring and in turn richly fed by the music created by Black classical composers from the early 20th century. I'm curious, when you saw the topic of this Sunday service, what style of music came to mind for you when you saw it was music by African Americans? Jazz, ragtime, spirituals, the blues, hip hop, rap, or gospel? Did you think classical music? Isn't that the really white European stuff? Isn't that sort of the definition of white supremacy? Haven't there even been calls to cancel Beethoven? And yet there are many Black musicians who have and currently work in the classical music traditions, not only in the United States and historically back from the Baroque era and before. This beautiful tradition of through composed art music. This is a music whose story has not been told, and that story tells us a lot, I think, about our current situation. This is also a personal story for me, as I find myself astonished that I am only now learning so much of this glorious music. This tells me quite a few things about what I've been taught and also what I've been willing to explore and learn on my own. Thanks to the support of this congregation, I've been pleased to be a member of the Association of Unitarian Universalist Music Ministries. Your support in the form of my professional development has allowed me to attend their annual conferences, and usually held in the summertime. And I have found these conferences to be rich experiences both in content and for the relationships with my fellow UU colleagues. A few summers ago, this organization asked us to deeply consider what music we were programming and urged us to decenter whiteness in our music programs. 2 summers ago, the conference featured only works composed by people of color. This has been a remarkable journey. I have been serving churches now for over 25 years. Yes, it is hard to believe. And in nearly all that time, I have enjoyed programming music by African Americans, including the spirituals. We did a service here about 10 years ago that was dedicated to this music. This is the music, to be specific, that was created by enslaved Africans in the United States, and then later carefully crafted into works of art by composers such as Harry T. Burleigh, William Dawson, and many, many others. It is a living testimony to the power of the human spirit to rise above oppression and hardship. It is also a kind of check the box music programming that white people, myself included, have been doing for a long time. And this is not to say that it's inappropriate for white choirs to sing this music or that we shouldn't. We should because of its power and history to remember, and also that Black creators have encouraged its performances, not just by Black performers. But we shouldn't stop there, telling ourselves that we are programming work by African Americans because we sing the spirituals, and not exploring the full spectrum of musical creation. I will point out that many hymns in our hymnals we have many spirituals in our hymnal, but not a lot of other hymns written by African American composers. I will also confess here that I felt that because I play jazz and ragtime, I've explored the African American music tradition fully. There is so much that I have missed. And this is a lesson for me. When I heard the call to decenter whiteness in our music program, I began afresh looking for musical sources. I found that many of our composers and arrangers, many of the composers and arrangers of the spirituals were also fantastic pianists and wrote amazing works for the piano, my favorite instrument. Why had I never thought to look before? You have heard many of these selections in our services, from piano suites by artists such as Harry T. Burleigh, the arranger of our closing hymn, and Nathaniel Dett, and others. My search has also coincided with a growing national movement to rediscover these lost artists. There have been many who have cherished the music the entire time. They're only lost to some of us. That has led me to discover composers such as Florence Price and her student Margaret Bonds, whose work, The Ballad of the Brown King, we performed last December. Music exists in a cultural and significant forces determine its success. If the culture supports the music and the artist, it can succeed to some part, regardless of the degree of its artistic worth. This is how a lot of contemporary music works. It is propagated by an entire industry, and certain elites make decisions about who will be a star and what will be a hit. If the culture does not support the artist, no matter how strong the quality, it will be very difficult for the artist to thrive. When Mozart was born in Salzburg in 1756, there was a very well-established musical culture in Europe, and Mozart's father, being a musician himself, knew how to raise his prodigy. Mozart was raised to be a phenomenon and rewarded both by his family circle and the cultural elite who supported his artistry. Everything was done to create a musical genius. As an aside, it is important to note that Wolfgang's sister was also a very capable musician, but wasn't encouraged to genius. But that is a topic for another reflection. Mozart's genius has been propagated throughout history so that he is a household name and a standard bearer for music in general. Florence Price, born in 1887 in Arkansas, was also a musical prodigy, playing her first piano performance at the age of 4 and had music published when she was 11. She became prolific composer of 4 symphonies, countless piano pieces, songs, which we heard only 2 of, and chamber music and more. However, the culture of the United States was much less welcoming and nurturing of her talent. She did have some considerable success. In 1933, the Chicago Symphony premiered her symphony in E minor, making her the first African-American woman to have a work played by a major US orchestra. And yet, though she went to school here in Boston at the New England Conservatory of Music, the Boston Symphony Orchestra only just programmed her music for the first time in 2018. In 1943, she wrote to the then music director, Sergei Koussevitzky of the BSO, himself heralded as a champion of new music. And she asked that her work be considered for performance. In this letter, she acknowledges the twin handicap of being a woman and being Black in America. William Grant Still, the Dean of American Composers, whose music we'll hear shortly, said, "It is unfortunate for a person of color who is ambitious to live in America." It is beyond the scope of this reflection to chart the entire history that kept this music from thriving. But I do want to point out that the musical establishment didn't discriminate against Black classical musicians alone. Jazz did not gain recognition as a serious art form in the United States until it was wildly heralded in Europe. So this summer, I took a dive into the piano repertoire of African-American composers. And I'm very excited to share this work with you, not just today, but in a performance on our concert series we are programming for Saturday, November 14th at 7:00 p.m. This will be our third Zoom concert. Details can be found on the website and in highlights. I have been deeply moved and inspired by these works I'm preparing. Works by Florence Price, Nathaniel Dett, William Grant Still, and Margaret Bonds. And this is the thing. Kusevitsky and others may have had good reasons for not programming this music. They may be justly accused of propagating white supremacy. However, we have all lost by not knowing this music better. I do not think it hyperbole to call it a national tragedy. There has been of late some consternation expressed about rewriting history. My recent experience suggests that in rewriting history, we are only going to make our collective story stronger and more beautiful. I am still astonished and saddened to think my teachers never assigned any of this music to me, but also astonished and saddened to know that I did not look for it myself until very recently. However, it is never too late to start, and I'm very thankful for that little nudge from the UU musicians and also the culture of this congregation that has been curious along with me. And now I would like to share with you William Grant Still's beautiful piano piece, Summertime, from 3 Visions. This is a work I will be performing also in November.
Thank you, John, for that moving reflection and for performing that beautiful piece by William Grant Still. We now come to the time in our service when we ask for an offering. And once again, I have to say that this service this morning again demonstrates why our church is so worthy of our financial support, not simply through our annual pledges, but also through what we can give in the offering on each Sunday service. So we're now asked to make an offering that allows us to exercise our generosity of spirit, an offering that will help support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. This Sunday, we share our gifts with the Winchester ABC, Better Chance, a nonprofit organization providing academically talented scholars of color with expanded educational and career opportunities. As I think you will see from what is now being shared on the screen, you can donate, you can make an offering in many different ways. You can donate this today through giving online through the church website, which you have there, the smartphone app Give Plus, or through PayPal, or by mailing a check to Winchester Unitarian Society, 478 Main Street, Winchester, Massachusetts, 01890. If you're making an offering or if you're mailing a check, please write or type on the check, please write or type the date of your offering in the memo line or comment field. And we ask that you give your offering online or by mail today so that we can send our collective gift to the Winchester ABC possible. And as is our practice, if you are a first-time worshiper with us this morning, we ask you to be our guest. And in lieu of a contribution, please complete the virtual visitor card so that we can stay connected beyond the Sunday. This morning's offering will now be generously given and gratefully received.
With the storm overhead, hang about, blood is shed, tread our path, forth we go, times of solace we will know. Was not yet the judge, was not faithful grudge. We will rise o'er our woe, lives fulfilling we will know. Here we are gathered, hallowed ground where we led, flame on eyes, smiles aglow, equal treatment we will know. Hands on high, eyes with pride, hand in hand,
Those who wish to do so are invited to join in reading together the community affirmation. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build the beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. Now please join in singing our closing hymn, number 148, Let Freedom Span Both East and West.
Let freedom span both east and west, and love both south and north, in universal fellowship throughout the whole wide earth. In beauty, wonder everywhere, let us communion find. Compassion be the golden cord, binding humankind. Beyond all barriers of race, of color, caste, or creed, let us make friendship human worth our common faith and deed. Then east and west will meet and share, and south shall build with north, one human commonwealth of good throughout the whole wide earth.
We close with these words by Maureen Caloran. As we listen to the blessing of music, may we know this ending as more than a time of goodbye. May the warmth of this community and the memory of our chalice flame sustain our hearts and encourage our minds as we engage the blessings of life's challenges and joys. Go in peace, go in joy, go in love.
Please now join in reading together the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the fire of commitment, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The service has ended, but our life of service continues. Let's continue our conversation in the chat, and then in a few minutes, we will be be invited to go into randomly assigned breakout rooms for unmuted conversation. Has an absolutely lovely day.